When I moved into the fourth-floor unit of a quiet apartment building on the edge of town, I told myself it was a fresh start. The truth? It was an escape, an attempt to put miles between me and the person who left me hollow. I didn't expect anything from this new chapter, just silence, space, and the comfort of being invisible. That was until I met Daniel. Daniel lived directly across the hall, early 30s, tall, relaxed in his posture with a sun-worn face that looked like it had spent more time smiling than frowning. He carried himself like someone who'd never second-guessed a thing in his life, a contrast to the nervous energy I wore like a second skin. We exchanged polite nods for a week or so, nothing more. He often returned from morning runs, headphones slung around his neck, nodding to me in the hallway as I collected my mail. I convinced myself he was just another straight guy, a friendly neighbor with an easy laugh and a girlfriend who'd show up eventually. I didn't plan on ever knocking on his door, but fate, or a very angry kitchen pipe, had other plans. It happened just after midnight. A sudden burst from beneath my sink, followed by a jet of water that soaked the cabinets and began pooling at my feet. I panicked, fumbling with towels, trying to remember if I even had a wrench. I hadn't unpacked everything yet. Alone, frustrated, and with water now threatening my hallway carpet, I did the only thing I could think of. I knocked. Daniel opened the door wearing gym shorts and a loose t-shirt, eyes fogged with sleep. "You okay?" "My kitchen's flooding. I don't know how to stop it." To his credit, he didn't hesitate. He grabbed a toolbox from somewhere behind his door and followed me in. Within minutes, he'd shut off the valve, tightened a joint I never noticed before, and wiped his hands on one of my already soaked towels. "You might need to get a plumber in, but that should hold for now," he said. "Thank you," I murmured, stunned by his calm. He glanced around the mess. "You just move in, right?" "Yeah, a couple weeks ago," he smiled. "Guess that makes me your official welcome committee." We shared a laugh, small but real. I noticed the way his eyes softened when he looked at me, not out of obligation, but as if I mattered for a moment, and when he left, offering, "If you ever need anything, I'm right across the hall," something shifted. I stood there in the quiet afterward, the sound of dripping water now gentle and rhythmic, and felt something unfamiliar take root. I told myself not to read into it, that he was just being neighborly. But long after the water was mopped up, I still found myself thinking about the way he said anything. And that night, for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel so invisible. After that night, something unspoken lingered between Daniel and me. It started with casual check-ins, him knocking to ask if the pipe held, or me offering to return his screwdriver. Then came the late afternoons, both of us coincidentally arriving home at the same time, leaning against door frames and exchanging stories about mundane things, traffic, grocery runs, the annoying hum from the hallway light. He was easy to talk to, almost dangerously so. Where I treaded carefully with my words, Daniel spoke like nothing he said could come back to hurt him. He wasn't just confident. He was comfortable in his skin. It made me ache in a way I couldn't explain. One evening, he invited me over for a beer. His place was warm, filled with scattered books, an old acoustic guitar leaning in the corner, and a couch that looked like it had held countless naps and stories. I noticed a framed photo on the shelf, him with a girl. I didn't ask, but I noticed the dust on the glass. We sat on the balcony, watching the sky shift into a bruised orange. He spoke about growing up in a small town, about leaving behind a life that never quite fit. There was a sadness buried under his stories, something unresolved. "I used to think I had everything figured out," he said, taking a sip of beer. "Turns out knowing what you want is harder than it looks." I looked at him, really looked. "And now?" He glanced at me, the corner of his mouth twitching into a half smile. "Now I'm just trying to listen to myself." There was a silence that felt both heavy and light, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. Our arms brushed. He didn't move away. Neither did I. But I didn't dare believe it meant anything. I reminded myself of that picture on the shelf, of the ease with which straight men sometimes flirt with the idea of closeness without understanding the damage it can leave behind. Still, I couldn't ignore the way he lingered outside my door. The next day, asking if I wanted to join him for a walk, or how he sat too close on the park bench, letting his knee rest against mine like it belonged there. And when I told my best friend about it over the phone, she didn't hesitate. "Be careful," she said. "He might not even realize he's crossing lines. That doesn't mean you won't get hurt." I wanted to believe she was wrong. I wanted to believe Daniel saw me the way I was starting to see him. But deep down, I knew hope could be as dangerous as desire. And as I watched him laugh at something on his phone, sitting across from me with his whole body turned in my direction, I realized I was already too far in to back out. The night it happened, thunder rolled in like a warning. The sky cracked open and spilled its fury across the city, soaking everything in relentless waves. I was curled up on my couch, half watching a documentary, half distracted by thoughts. I hadn't dared speak aloud. Then came a knock. I opened the door to find Daniel, drenched, hoodie clinging to his frame, flashlight in one hand and a crooked grin on his face. "Power's out on my side. You got light?" I nodded and stepped aside. He brushed past me, dripping onto the floor, completely unbothered. "I brought whiskey," he added, holding up a flask like it was a peace offering. We sat cross-legged. On the floor, a couple of candles flickering between us. Shadows danced on the walls as the storm raged outside. It felt removed from reality, like the world had paused, and we were the only two people left in it. He talked first, about his past relationship, about how it ended not with anger, but with emptiness. "I think she knew before I did," he muttered, "that I was searching for something I couldn't name." There was no bravado in his voice, just honesty. It disarmed me. I told him about the ex who made me feel like a placeholder, a secret never meant to be acknowledged in daylight. Daniel listened, really listened, his gaze locked onto mine like he was hearing every word that went unsaid. Then, without warning, he reached out and took my hand. "I feel safe here," he whispered. I could barely breathe. "So do I." The space between us evaporated. It wasn't urgent. It was gentle, hesitant, like we were both afraid one wrong move would shatter the moment. When he kissed me, it was soft, questioning, as if asking for permission even as our hearts had already answered. We didn't say anything after, we didn't need to. We fell asleep on the couch, shoulders pressed together, the storm finally quiet outside. But the silence the next morning was deafening. He woke before me. By the time I opened my eyes, he was slipping on his hoodie, eyes fixed on the floor. "Thanks for the company," he said. No warmth, no softness, just a carefully placed wall where there hadn't been 1 hour earlier. He was gone before I could ask what had changed. Later that day, I passed 2 neighbors chatting near the mailboxes. One of them smirked and said Daniel had been testing boundaries, that he'd told them about getting close with the new guy. Their laughter echoed in my chest like a bruise being pressed. I walked past them, head down, stomach twisting. The connection I thought we shared, the truth I believed had been spoken in candlelight, was now a joke whispered between doors. What stung most wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing I had given my heart to someone who hadn't even decided what his was worth. I avoided Daniel for days. Each time I passed his door, I felt the ache of humiliation bloom in my chest all over again. The walls between us, once thin and filled with easy conversation, now felt like concrete. I replayed everything, the whiskey, the kiss, the way he said he felt safe. Was it all just performance? A moment of drunken confusion he needed to erase with silence? But the words I'd overheard downstairs clung to me harder than his absence. He hadn't just ghosted me. He'd turned what we shared into something laughable. It was nearing midnight when the knock came. I didn't move at first, pretending I hadn't heard it, but the knock came again, softer this time. Reluctantly, I opened the door. Daniel stood there, hands in his pockets, his usual confidence absent. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, like he hadn't slept in days. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I didn't invite him in. I waited." He looked down, swallowing hard. I panicked. That morning I woke up and realized I'd crossed a line I didn't understand, so I shut down. I stayed quiet, not to hurt him, but because I needed to hear everything. "I didn't tell them what really happened," he continued. "I lied. I made it sound like it was a game because I was terrified of what it meant if it wasn't." My heart twisted. "And what does it mean now?" He stepped closer, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but it meant something. You meant something. I wasn't pretending. I just didn't know how to be honest with anyone, especially myself." I wanted to believe him. I still wanted to believe him. But belief isn't enough. "Do you even know what you want, Daniel?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, not yet." I nodded, feeling a strange calm wash over me. For the first time, I wasn't begging for answers. I was deciding which ones I needed to hear. "I loved what we shared," I said, "but I can't be someone's experiment. I can't be your secret or your maybe." He didn't argue. He just looked at me with a sadness I didn't know how to carry. "If you ever figure it out," I added, "and if I'm still here, maybe we'll talk." Daniel gave a faint nod, his eyes glistening. "I hope I do." Then he turned and walked away, not in anger, but in understanding. The door closed and I leaned against it, heart heavy but strangely whole. I had wanted so badly for this to be a love story. Maybe in some quiet way it still was. Just not the kind where two people end up together, but the kind where one finally remembers how to stand alone.